Hi, everyone. Welcome to Getting Started with Governance, the first 3 steps of your governance journey. Thanks for being here today. My name is Neil Beshley. I'm a customer success manager at Quickbase, and I've been with the company for 4 years. I started with Quickbase on the care team for my first 2 years. And during that time, I triaged over 5,000 customer support tickets. So during that time, I got a pretty good idea of the product itself, and I got to know a lot of customers like you. Today in my customer success role, I really like my job because I'm constantly learning from our customers who, fortunately for me, are very forward thinking problem solvers in each of their own industries. And I'll pause for a moment here and let my manager, Molly Bochelle, introduce herself.
Thanks, Neil. Hey, everybody. My name is Molly Bochelle, and I am a manager on the customer success team. Prior to my role as a manager, I was also a customer success manager, working with our customers at all stages of their Quickbase journey as they determined the best governance strategy that worked for them. We've learned a lot from working with those customers, and so I'm especially excited to talk with you today about the first 3 steps that you can take in your governance journey. Back to you, Neil.
Okay, so goals of this session, what we're hoping you leave today with. First is knowledge. So we want you to walk away from this session knowing what questions you need to be asking yourself when you're thinking about starting up a governance framework for your Quickbase instance. We also want you to be confident. So please leave here feeling confident, knowing where to begin, while at the same time being mindful of your own organizational needs. And finally, after showing these questions you should be asking yourself, combining all of those into an action plan so you can hit the ground running and creating your own governance framework. Agenda for today. We're going to start with the easy questions first. What is governance? Why does it matter? And some key points there. And then we're going to get into the 3 Ps is what we're calling them. First, with people, identifying your key players, who should be involved with your Quickbase instance and all the different built-in administrative roles. Policies, understanding your organization's rules and guidelines and standard regulations. And process, communicating how work gets done in Quickbase. Taking all of those concepts together and formulating an action plan so you know exactly where you need to be starting when you start down this path of governance framework. So why does this matter? Why does governance matter? All organizations need to plan how they use data so that it's handled consistently throughout their business. This is not only ensuring that data is safe and handled in compliance with regulations, but it's also going to help you gain value with all this information at your fingertips. So overall, it's going to be improving your business performance. Now, establishing governance framework certainly can be time consuming at first, but the end result here is saving time and resources, reducing risk, and ensuring sustainability on your Quickbase platform. Some examples included would be reduced costs. So if you talk to any folks in centralized IT, less duplication of data across your organization saves your company a lot of money. Lower risks. Accessibility and quality of data is of utmost importance to many industries. Stronger regulatory compliance. If you are in a highly regulated industry, such as finance or healthcare, external audits could be much easier now and very likely could have less negative findings during them when they occur. And sustainability. What I mean by sustainability is creating a long-term plan for continued success and growth on the Quickbase platform. I like to think that governance framework not only is setting you up for success today in your Quickbase ecosystem, but if it's planned out in a thoughtful way, it can set you up for success for years to come. Another result we see with customized governance framework is that it enables your IT group to fully embrace citizen development and encourage its growth within a business as a good thing. Now, some of you may be wondering if this session is for you. Because your company may be in a different stage of its own life cycle, your first steps in framework will be different based on where you are in your journey with Quickbase. This session aims to provide you with the tools you need to get started on governance by asking the right questions to formulate your first 3 steps towards policy and process excellence. Now, should you feel you are further along in this process, we do have a slew of other Empower sessions for you to consider. A few I've mentioned here. My colleague, Marissa Newmeyer, is covering New Admin's Roadmap to Success. And if you're looking for kind of the bigger picture or like the top-down approach for kind of senior decision-making, Kat Catini from our product team will be covering data governance and admin strategy. Back to today's session topic. So where should you start with your governance journey? We have identified 3 areas where you should be asking your questions. The answers to these questions should clarify where you should be focusing your efforts as you begin to design your framework. They happen to all conveniently start with the letter P for your reference. We're going to start today with people. And by people, we mean who is involved, who needs to be involved, and do these people have the resources and enablement they need? So identifying your people, first you need to understand what the key roles in Quickbase are and what they do for you as you build applications and support them. These people need to be clear on the expectations of the roles. And finally, once you identify the proper people, you should be looking for any skill gaps they might have or education they need to be successful in the role, and align them up with and offer them support to be successful there. So as you progress in your governance journey, it may become evident that you will require customized roles or additional people involved in your framework based on your organizational needs. Because we can't really predict that and cater to everyone's individual needs, today, we're just going to be talking about the built-in roles in Quickbase, what comes out of the box when you get onto a Quickbase instance. And we're going to dive a little deeper into what those are and what they do. So Realm admins first. This is at the very top of the hierarchy of administrative roles. A Realm admin has the capability of managing passwords or creating custom password policies. Realm admins also would be the point of contact to configure something like single sign-on or SCIM provisioning. They would also have access to create advanced encryption with your data for a higher level or layer of security, and they'd be able to manage and rotate out those encryption keys based on their own decided schedule. Typical titles we see with Realm admins, oftentimes because of the access they need to IT resources. IT manager would be one, and also a network administrator. Prerequisites for Realm administrators to be successful, they'd want to have access or knowledge of your IT requirements internally, or be really close with someone who does know those things. And also, if you're considering something like implementing single sign-on, they would need access to managing your Active Directory as well. Next would be account admins, and these are in particular our full management. These are the people who are managing your people in Quickbase, so user management and also the apps that the users are accessing. Account admins can remove users, add users to their different apps in Quickbase. They can reassign apps to different app managers should one leave or move on to a new role at your organization. And also, they manage your plan, like your commercial plan of Quickbase. So these are the contacts that your account executive on the Quickbase side of things would be reaching out to discuss things like renewals, or if you might need to discuss adding new users, or if you're looking for some kind of enablement service. These are the people that would be making those decisions and in those conversations with our account team. Typical titles we see on our as customer service at Quickbase, we see a lot of project managers, and project managers actually are probably the most common titles we see across Quickbase for our customer base. Also just line of business management leaders. These are the people that are closest to the work in what Quickbase is solving for them. So that's why we often see them kind of taking the lead in these efforts. Some prerequisites that your account admin should have when they're going into this role. They should be aware of your access policies, who should be accessing data and for what reason, because ultimately they have that lock and key over who gets to have access to your Quickbase instance. And also roadmap knowledge. And what we mean by that is not the Quickbase product roadmap, but your roadmap as an organization and where you want to go with Quickbase. And that will lend a hand to you when you have conversations with your account executive so that you know exactly what you need as you approach something like a renewal date, so that you can have a strategic conversation and getting exactly what you need with the most value for your next term with Quickbase in your contract. We also have support level account admins. And just so we can quickly touch on when you might choose to make someone a support level admin, it's very similar in permissions to a full management account admin. However, they cannot make any of those commercial changes to your account plan. Oftentimes we see this set up in larger enterprise accounts where someone might want to be the decision maker or stakeholder in Quickbase and own the overall process by making those decisions commercially, but they don't have the bandwidth or the ability to do the day-to-day stuff. So a support level account admin would enable you to delegate day-to-day management without giving that person full control of the entire account plan. App builders, my favorite. App builders are the people that are actually in there rolling up their sleeves and solving problems. They're going to be taking in new use cases or new app requests, and they're going to be designing those and building them out and enhancing them as they go. They're going to be mapping out their data process before they do so. And they're also going to be the ones who will be performing continued maintenance and maybe change requests or enhancement requests. Quickbase has been around for quite a long time, 20 years now. So we're at a point now where some people actually have the official title of Quickbase developer, which is really exciting for me. And also just a general application analyst. Some prerequisites that I would highly recommend your builders need to make sure they are using best practices and building sustainable apps. People who have completed our Quickbase University courses. And once you've taken in and absorbed all that material, you should feel pretty confident in passing one of our certification exams. We offer our builder certification and then a more in-depth advanced builder certification, which gives you a fancy badge that you can put on your LinkedIn profile and show off and boast to your colleagues at work after you have achieved all this Quickbase knowledge. Citizen development is very much here to stay, and companies are adapting to the world around them, and having solutions designed by the people closest to the work is creating unprecedented value and operational agility within those organizations. So while you may determine for your own purposes that IT does not need to be directly involved with your Quickbase instance, in our experience, we see that the most successful governance teams are managing Quickbase by collaborating with their central IT group. We've seen a few different approaches to citizen development since its introduction to the business world. One being totally centralized control of app development from something like a central IT group. On the other end of the spectrum, we see no framework in place where anyone can build without any prerequisites or training. And I'm sure some of you folks on this call can anticipate where that might cause some issues further down the line. So we at Quickbase, supporting our customers, what we envision for you is a partnership between line of business and IT to enforce policy and procedure, but at the same time enabling and supporting the people closest to the problems and building out those apps as citizen developers. Let's dive into policy. Now, while Quickbase, as a vendor and a platform, we are responsible for providing the customer with a world-class platform that meets these enterprise security standards. But you as the customer would be responsible for ensuring that your data and app structure is in compliance with your own industry regulations and internal policies. Now, just to briefly elaborate, on our commitment of Quickbase to hold up our end of the bargain when it comes to security. All of our efforts around security have resulted in an A rating with Security Scorecard. And Security Scorecard is a security rating platform that uses a bunch of different broad-based information to generate metrics on critical security areas. Now, I don't expect anyone to absorb everything on this particular slide today. It's just an example of all these badges and certifications that we have achieved as a platform to answer the call of all of our customers in their various industries with their different regulatory needs. If you don't find what you're looking for, and we're very transparent and proud of our security and compliance, we have this all on our general Quickbase website on our security and compliance page. Should you not find what you're looking for, please reach out to your account team and ask them for a security review. And should you have your own security checklist for like internal audits or something else, we would be more than happy to work with you to complete that as well. I would say that the number one cause of a governance framework failing with a Quickbase customer is when they come to the realization that they are not adhering to their own internal policies within their Quickbase instance. And so if the owners, right, if these account admins and realm admins and builders are skating by these policies and not taking them into consideration when building out Quickbase, no one else is going to. So some areas where you may need to clarify your own internal policies, I've listed them out here for today, and these are just a few examples, but these are some of the pillars that we see more often than not with our customers. We're just going to dive into them real quick here as well. So access control. These are policies set and maintained, usually by a central IT or information security team as a global set of policies. And it's important to be aware of these policies and coordinate with those internal teams to set your access control specifically for Quickbase. Questions you should be asking yourself, particularly here, are who should be accessing Quickbase apps, under what mechanism, and under what circumstances. Risk management. This is where we see oftentimes, and the questions you should be asking are, does your industry or does your company require application and data classification? Do you anticipate initial app audits or continuous app audits? And what do you have in place today to manage or prevent this kind of risk? Data encryption. This is ensuring that all your data is encrypted in transit as well as at rest using the highest of industry standards. Quickbase enables you to manage and rotate and control your own advanced encryption keys. Acceptable use policies. This is when you're tying in your own internal policies and corporate policies and procedures with things that we've built out in Quickbase for enablement, such as builder certification. And also just to consider building, creating your own internal builder community. Example of that is right here at our own shop at Quickbase. As you can imagine, we leverage our own platform to help customers like you every day. And some of the best ideas we see with our own internal apps come from collaboration across different departments. And we are constantly learning from each other within our own organization by sharing what we learn as we build out these new app concepts and use cases. So I highly encourage you to kind of create that kind of culture and community yourself. Identity management integration. This is the name of the game here is just to ensure that the right users in an enterprise have the appropriate access to a tech resource such as Quickbase. So this is when you would consider something like single sign-on or SAML or skim provisioning, and Quickbase can help you do both. I am going to hand it over to my friend Molly Boschel, and she will dive into our third P, process.
Great. Thanks so much, Neil. So process is oftentimes one of the more interesting pieces of governance to me. And one of the reasons for that is that oftentimes defining a process simply means writing down the information that already lives in someone's head. Other times you have a chance as an organization to be really proactive in deciding how work or requests get made and who does that work and how you communicate it to your broader organization so that your users, your builders, your admins are aware of the best way to successfully work with you. So on this slide here, you'll see we have some very important processes laid out. And these, I think, are probably the top 4 processes I see as being important as part of an overall governance strategy. Managing and monitoring seats, the app idea, intake and change requests, identifying and training new builders, and app documentation and transitions. Sometimes when I've worked with customers, we've gotten to this stage of their governance journey where we're defining process and they say, oh, I should have this written down already. And oftentimes when you approach this point in your governance journey, you really recognize it. There are certain signs that start coming up to the surface that say, I wonder if the way that we've always done things may not be the way that we want to do things moving forward. And so as we work through this process section, we're going to talk about a few of those signs that you might be starting to see even within your own team or organizations. And then the questions you should be asking yourself as you define these processes for yourself and your organization. So let's go ahead and jump into monitoring and managing seats. So if you are in charge of your Quickbase account, let's say you are the person who manages who has access to Quickbase, you might see a few signs that let you know that you need to further define this process. For example, if you have a lack of clarity on which teams use Quickbase and what they use Quickbase for, or if you learn that someone on the team left the organization, and maybe it's even significantly after the event. Finally, if you go into your admin console, which is a great tool for understanding overall the apps and users that are in your Quickbase account, and you see that someone's last access date was a very long time ago, that might be another sign that a process to manage and monitor your seats could be beneficial. Now, when you're defining your process, if you don't have one already, some questions to consider can be found on the right. For example, how will an app manager be notified when a user is no longer with the company or has changed roles? Does the company utilize an identity management system? And will Quickbase utilize that as well? Finally, how often will users be audited and by whom to ensure that they are still accessing applications? Defining these questions proactively will help ensure that you're able to review this information on your Quickbase account on a regular basis to get ahead of some of the signs or symptoms, if you will, that you might be seeing already. Now, the second process is for managing the process of idea or apps ideas from your organization and change requests. So if you have folks across the business who are hearing a little bit more about Quickbase, sometimes what we'll find is that they have an idea for a process that currently lives in email or Excel. Now, defining a way for those folks to ensure that they can submit the idea that they have for a Quickbase application really helps oftentimes the main builder at an organization in a few key ways. So if you find that people are coming to you with ideas via email, Slack, or even a casual conversation, that might be a sign that you want to define your app idea intake process. On the other hand, if you're getting change requests for existing applications and you find yourself reactively making all of those changes without necessarily having the chance to thoughtfully reflect on whether they are good for the long-term health of the application, you might want to define your change request process. Now, finally, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the volume of the requests that you are receiving as an admin, that's a third sign that we might want to take a step back and define this process to put you back in the driver's seat. I think this one is especially near and dear to my heart. As customer success managers, we oftentimes do work with the main builder in an account, and they may find that they develop a Quickbase application that is then so successful that they receive all of the questions and concerns about the app moving forward, or small changes to a report or a form that would really help a specific user or a specific team. So that feeling of overwhelm in particular is one that I think has the most opportunity for improvement by taking this proactive step of defining your change request process. Now, how do you do that? Well, let's ask ourselves a few questions to consider. Does your organization have a tool or process for managing requests today? Should app requests go through an approval process? Let's say that you decide that your change requests should go through a process. What information is going to be required in order to request an app or a change? Finally, how are improvement requests made and approved? This process in particular, I think, is highly valuable to define and then communicate to your organization. When your users and your builders understand the best way to engage with your team who is making the governance decisions and sometimes even executing the work, it's going to make sure that this process is more efficient for you and your colleagues moving forward, ensuring that you have a 20,000-foot view of all of the requests being made of you and your team, that you have the information you need to be able to prioritize the work accordingly, and that you have a way to follow up with the folks who are either requesting apps or change requests to close the loop. Identifying and training new builders. This is another process where if you're just getting started in your Quickbase journey, you may have already intuitively identified the folks on your team who are going to be the builders, either creating an application from scratch or being responsible for modifying and maintaining the app moving forward. However, if you're further along in your Quickbase journey, you may find that your organization may benefit from having even more builders, folks that can be leveraged as part of the previous process we talked about to build new applications for your organization, or simply execute on the change requests that are being made for your existing apps. When that time comes, you might see that you only have 1 or 2 people with the skill to support app development or maintenance. You might also find that apps being developed aren't necessarily meeting your quality standards, particularly if you're the more experienced builder in your organization. Finally, you might find that users or even people within an administrator role in an application are coming to admins for requests that they could self-serve. So if you find that you are running into these signs more often than not, here are a few questions to consider. Who has a strong aptitude for data, communication, process, or continuous improvement? Does anyone on your team have experience with web development? What current needs do you have as it relates to Quickbase? And finally, what skills are required to do that work and what training resources are available? So to dive in a little bit deeper to that question there, if you're going through your process and trying to identify folks that are going to build new applications from scratch, those people are going to need different skills and different training resources than, let's say, someone who's going to help a specific team build better reports in your application. It's possible to bring new builders into an organization and walk through the entire process of perhaps eventually even becoming builder certified. But if you find that some of your most experienced, skillful builders are spending time on requests like developing reports, you might decide that it would be beneficial for you to share report skill resources with certain teams, or even perhaps work with those teams one-on-one or in small groups to give them the skills to self-serve and free up the resources who are more skilled or experienced to take on some of the more challenging building work that you've identified as high priority or high value for your organization. Finally, app documentation and transitions. I think of all of the processes, this one tends to be highly important and yet oftentimes not particularly urgent. When we work with, let's say, teams or organizations who are in the process of standing up their first or second or third application, oftentimes there's a lot of excitement and energy around developing the app itself. That totally makes sense. And oftentimes there's a key business reason driving a deadline to roll out or share an application and begin seeing the value of putting that process into Quickbase. Even after that rollout happens, oftentimes change requests will start to come in, and then you'll be directly working with your end users to ensure adoption and that the app is meeting all of the expectations that you set forth in your original success criteria. But an important piece of ensuring that you have successfully really rolled out the app for long-term health and sustainability is documentation, ensuring that different fields, reports, forms, even automated sort of actions happening behind the scenes with pipelines or webhooks are documented so that everyone has access to that information. That can be particularly useful as well if there are ever any transitions on your team where someone changes roles or moves into a different part of the organization. So here are a few signs to look for to determine whether app documentation should be a priority for you when you're establishing your action plan. If there's one person to go to with questions about how an app, a field, a report, or an automated action work, that's a sign it would be helpful to really dig into documentation and ensure that the knowledge that currently lives in someone's head is recorded somewhere. I have a feeling that if you're in this session, there's a chance you might even be that one person that has all that information. Another sign to look for is that change requests are being made without a clear resolution, or if they're rejected, it's unclear why. An important part of closing that change request process is documentation to ensure that when you have thoughtfully made a decision about whether or not to pursue a change, it's recorded so that if, let's say, you come back in the future, or a future builder administrator you may not have even identified yet, they understand why that decision was made so that they can save time in the future from going through the same process and perhaps even making a different decision and realizing in hindsight why you didn't initially pursue the change. Finally, a third sign to look for is that you are repeatedly answering the same questions. If folks, and let's say your end users, are frequently asking you the same thing over and over, but you find yourself having to explain the same thing every time, there might be a need there for you to record the response in some kind of documentation so that you're able to share that with people, maybe even send them a link, rather than having the same conversation time and time again. So now that we know what signs to look for, here are some questions to consider. Which workflows would be the most high value to record or document? For me, I like to think of the most complex processes that it would be difficult to work out, or the most frequently used that would save me time when I don't want to necessarily explain it again and again. Another question to consider: how would we onboard a new admin tomorrow? What resources would we need? And where should they be kept to ensure business continuity? Documenting is a high value activity, of course, for any organization, but it's more valuable when the end result of that documentation lives in, let's say, a Quickbase app where your key admins and builders have access to it versus on somebody's desktop. Another question to consider: have I closed the loop on recent change requests? If someone asked this question again in 4 years, would I remember the decision I made and why? Finally, what types of resources does my organization value? Think video recordings or maybe even process documents. How challenging would it be to update these if the process changed? Now, when you're thinking about what types of resources your organization really uses, that will really help you put the documentation in a format where folks are going to be able to consume and act on that information. When you think about how challenging it would be to update a process, oftentimes there are different parts of an application some which are tried and true year over year because the process is fairly fixed or well established. There can be other places where you know that as a business, you are evolving that process or you are planning to make changes in an application. And so when you're thinking through documentation, that can be a helpful lens to ensure that the documentation you create today is just as useful down the line, and that you have the ability to iterate on that documentation whenever it makes sense for you and your organization.
Great, thanks, Molly. So let's tie all these concepts together with all the questions that you can go ahead and answer and bring them together to create an action plan for success with your governance framework. So starting with your people, determining if the right people currently are involved in your Quickbase process. So after you review your admin console, realm admins, account admins, and your app managers and builders, are these people the correct people in the role? Are there enough of them? And are these people enabled and clear on the expectations and roles? Have these people been enabled through university and certification? Some example actions after you answer these questions. Contact your customer success manager for training resources and enablement services. You may want to involve a colleague from IT for support and the realm admin responsibilities in particular. So implementing single sign-on, encryption, and customized password policies. And you might decide you'll need to identify and enable more than one person in each role. So this is to ensure sustainability, to continue the charge of modifying, maintaining these apps for years to come, hopefully. Policy. Are your apps and data today aligned with your company's standards and regulations? So research your company's security and compliance standards. Review the types of data you're keeping in Quickbase. Educate yourself on your company's internal policies and industry regulations. So some examples of what you might decide to do after reviewing and answering these questions. Implementing single sign-on to align with your corporate sign-in policies. You may decide you need to scrub your existing data within your Quickbase applications in order for them to be compliant with your industry regulations. And you might decide you want to create an acceptable use policy to promote best practices when building these apps and to create a builder community that I alluded to earlier for collaboration and inspiration as you go forward, fleshing out new use cases. Processes. Are you leveraging all of our Quickbase features to align people and policy? What are your mechanisms today for these process improvements? Are you managing your users and your access requests? And where are you documenting these app workflows and new app requests? Now, we have a Quickbase Exchange, and it's free for you to use and leverage. So I highly encourage you after today's session to go ahead and download our feedback app for change requests and process improvement, as well as check out our easy account management app that includes a Quickbase admin console sync. And that is more geared towards improving auditing and documentation. Let's take a look at these. The feedback app. Now, this is designed to improve your procedures with like a mechanism for feedback and requests. And you can document this and look back upon these and also check in and see what the current status and progress is. Easy account management with the included Quickbase Sync. This is a daily track of usage of apps and also changes made to specific apps or users themselves with access to the apps. As you can see here, this dashboard is displaying people from different departments and how many of them are accessing user seats. Also just top apps and the usage of them, app size, a whole bunch of different data you could look at. Realm admins currently and with their contact info, their last access, and a bunch of different login information for auditing purposes. So today, we talked about governance. Where you are today with it, why it matters to you and your organization, the people involved, who is playing a role in your Quickbase journey, And are they the right people? And what do they need from us as a provider? Resources, training, what do they need to be successful? Policy, which is the importance of understanding and adhering to your own organization's policies. And process. What processes should proactively be defined for success and for smooth sailing going forward with Quickbase? Combining all these things and asking the right questions and getting those answers should be able to be used to combine people, policy, and procedure to create concrete next steps for your action plan. I'm sure there are questions on this call, so now we are going to conclude here and take some time to meet you all and answer those questions.